Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unlocking the Mysterious LaPS Rule. My name is Felicia Saunier. I am an Assistant Director with the Office of State Procurement, and joining me today is
Tom Ketterer. I'm the Deputy Director at the Office of State Procurement.
We have found that whenever we are providing training or speaking at a meeting or some sort of function, and the LaPS rule is mentioned, when we look out into the audience, there always appears to be blank faces and wide eyes. When we ask the audience to raise their hands if they have heard of the LaPS rule and know when it is applicable, not many hands go up. Today, we will attempt to provide you with guidance on the LaPS rule, and we will hopefully answer all of the questions that you may have regarding the rule.
So let's go over the objectives that we're going to cover today with this mysterious rule that people don't know a lot about. What exactly is the LaPS rule? What does LaPS stand for? You know, we have all these acronyms in the world of procurement. What does LaPS stand for? What does the LaPS rule apply to? And who all needs to apply this LaPS rule? When was this mysterious rule established? Why was this LaPS rule established? How do you go about being in compliance with the LaPS rule? And how do I find statewide contracts that the LaPS rule does apply to?
LaPS. We keep saying LaPS, but we haven't even told you what LaPS stands for. So LaPS is the acronym for Louisiana Pricing Schedules.
So, what is it? The LaPS rule applies when you utilize certain types of statewide contracts. Those contracts that it applies to are brand name contracts, LaPS contracts, and multi-state cooperative contracts. This rule does apply to any and all users of these type of contracts. It is applied whenever you are making a purchase over $25,000 utilizing one of those type of contracts. When you apply this rule, it requires a request for responses, which is basically a informal process used to make a best value determination on your procurement. And when you use that RFR, it requires that the using agency submits at least a RFR to 3 contract holders whenever available, and 2 contract holders that offer a functionally equivalent product or service that will meet their needs.
So a little history behind the LaPS rule. The LaPS rule was promulgated in 2007, and at that time you could find it in the Louisiana Administrative Code, Title 34, Part 1, Chapter 1709. So prior to the promulgation of the rule, the Office of State Procurement always highly recommended to agencies utilizing our statewide contracts that when there are multiple contracts for the same type of product, that the agencies should shop our contracts, to look at more than one contract to make their best value determination of which contract they would decide to order from. You should kind of associate this with your personal life. You may look at the same item at different stores, or you may look at different brands of the same type of product, and then you make your personal decision of which store you will make your purchase from, or which brand of product you will actually purchase. Well, there was a specific situation which happened, and I'm not naming any names, where there was an improper use of one of our contracts by an entity that ended up in a big, nasty legal battle. Due to this misuse of the contract, it was determined by this office that a rule would need to be promulgated to provide direction to agencies on the use of specific contracts which are established by the Office of State Procurement, and to ensure that all users of our contracts are good stewards of the taxpayers' money. As you know, in the purchasing world, following rules is very important. It keeps us out of trouble and out of the newspaper and off of TV, and it was felt that by promulgating this rule, the rule would do just that. So we also, in 2007, issued Memorandum OSP 08-02 to inform our users of the new rule that we had just put into place. And this is a screenshot of the rule that was promulgated in 2007. In 2014, the rule was re-promulgated when the reorganization of the procurement regulations was done due to the passage of Act 864 of the 2014 regular legislative session, which combined Chapter 16, the Professional Personal Consulting and Social Services Procurement, and Chapter 17, the Louisiana Procurement Code of Title 39 of the Louisiana Revised Statute. At that time, the rule then became found in the Louisiana Administrative Code, Title 34, Part 5, still Chapter 1709. In 2018, the rule was amended when we went through the process of restructuring the rules due to the consolidation of what used to be called OCR, the Office of Contractual Review, and the Office of State Purchasing into the Office of State Procurement. Basically, when the rule was amended, it eliminated the requirement for the submission of an IT-10 request to the Office of Information Technology, who had also gone through a consolidation and became the Office of Technology Services. So that's the history of the relapse rule.
We talked about the different types of contracts when you have to apply the lapse rule. So we're going to go over those three main types of contracts that it applies to, starting with brand name contracts. So brand name contracts are statewide contracts where we only allow a specified brand to be bid. These exist for situations where there are like items for multiple brands of the same type of product or service. Usually these are developed because it is very challenging and difficult to competitively bid these items out. And also these items cannot be objectively evaluated using a competitive specification. In some situations, there's just not any expertise available to develop a competitive specification. So when all of these are applicable to a bid situation, sometimes it is we use brand name contracts to meet the various needs of various agencies statewide. So in order to have a brand name contract, that particular commodity has to be opened up to the availability of utilizing a brand name contract. So here's a list to give you an idea of what types of contracts you may need to apply the lapse rule. Here's a list of the current commodities that we have opened up to brand name contracts. As you can see, mainly it's a lot of different types of equipment, including agricultural, industrial, lawn care. We also have some furniture that we have some institutional furniture that we have brand name contracts for, various janitorial and water treatment chemicals, surveillance equipment, portable radios, outdoor motors, different types of equipment such as that. Once again, these are statewide contracts for items that are very similar, that have multiple manufacturers that offer very similar products. When you're utilizing one of these brand name contracts for any purchases over $25,000, you must apply the lapse rule.
So another kind of contract that the lapse rule applies to is our contracts that we consider LaPS contracts. Again, another acronym that is used by the Office of State Procurement, and LaMAS is the acronym for Louisiana Multiple Award Schedule. Louisiana Administrative Code 34-5-2706 gives us the ability to enter into these types of contracts. And the LaMAS contracts are based on a GSA schedule. If you're not aware of it, state agencies do not have the ability to purchase directly from a GSA schedule. The Office of State Procurement has a process in place that we have to go through before we issue any contract that we call LaMAS. The first thing is we have to look at any current contracts. Well, we have to look to see whether or not we have any current contracts for that commodity. Now, there may be a situation where even if we have a current contract for that commodity, we still may determine that it's in the best interest of the state to proceed with doing a LaMAS contract. So we do have that ability to do that. The commodity has to be opened by the Office of State Procurement, which means that we have to do research and make a recommendation to open the commodity and receive approval. Any commodity that has been opened by OSP for a LaMAS contract will be posted to the Office of State Procurement's website. It also requires the participation of a Louisiana licensed dealer or distributor, and it also requires that the contractor agree to our Louisiana terms and conditions. So this is a list of the current commodities that have been approved to be opened for LaMAS contracts. Again, this list can be found on our website, and as you can see, it does include a variety of different types of commodities. Access and security systems, automotive shop equipment and supplies, breast pumps, carpet, digital court reporting equipment and software, fire trucks, fixed seating, floor maintenance machines, hand tools, light bars and sirens, machinery and hardware, industrial, medical devices, some office furniture, and specialty vehicles for homeland defense.
So the third type of statewide contracts that the LaPS rule applies to are the multi-state cooperative contracts that our office has established. We participate with several different cooperatives, and those are listed here on the screen. Our biggest cooperative group is with NASPO Value Point. We also sometimes utilize Omnia Partners cooperatives, which were previously known as you may know them as U.S. Communities and National IPA. We have a few Sourcewell cooperatives, formerly known as National Joint Powers Alliance, or NJPA. These type of cooperative contracts are bid out by a lead state somewhere, across the country, and these type of contracts utilize the buying power combined potentially of all 50 states. That's why they're called a cooperative type contract. When we establish one of these cooperatives, our office negotiates the participating addendum with the vendor, and we incorporate our own Louisiana terms and conditions to tailor our needs and legal requirements. So some of those cooperative, the commodities that we have established, these cooperative contracts, are defibrillators, cloud solutions, computer equipment, copiers, data communications, electronic monitoring, facilities, MRO, which is your Granger contract, and Fastenal, fleet GPS, different types of flooring materials, lab equipment. We've recently started some office furniture cooperatives. Very new one is sign language and interpretation contract, playground equipment for the schools to use mainly, professional grade tools, public safety access and LED light bars, public safety video systems, security and fire protection, small package delivery, which is your FedEx and UPS contracts, software value-added resellers. The tires contract is a big one. Uniform rental, we just recently established, vehicle lists, and wireless communication. When utilizing any of these cooperatives, for over $25,000 purchase, you must utilize the lapse rule.
So I'm sure you're all wondering, how do you determine whether or not one of our contracts is a lapse contract? Well, as we have explained, if the contract was established as a brand name contract, as a LaPS contract, or in accordance with a multi-state cooperative, that contract is considered a lapse contract. You may find in the contract description the word brand name. You may find LaPS in the contract description, which will let you know that this is a lapse contract. If you look at the supplier text on the contract, it may reference a brand name. It may reference LaPS, or it may reference the cooperative name. So that's another way that you can tell whether or not the contract is lapsed. Also, when you look at the contract on ECAT, there is an indicator that should be set at yes if the contract is a lapse contract. So this screen shows how the contract looks on ECAT. And as you can see, the third line down, it says lapse contract. And as you can see, this specific contract, the indicator is set as yes.
We also have on our OSP website a listing of all of the contracts that do fall into the lapse classification. And the link here on the screen will bring you to that listing on our website. Which brings us to our website. For those of you that are not familiar with the OSP website, I highly encourage you to go on the website and just become familiar with the different areas of the website. And this is our home page, and as you see at the bottom of the screen, we have an agency center, obviously for the agencies. We have a vendor center, and what you can't see on the screen, and it's right below these two, is our training center, which you may find beneficial. As you were told at the beginning of this presentation, all of these PowerPoints will be posted to our website, and that training center is where these trainings are posted. You can view previous, if you ever have a situation where there's a subject or a topic that you're curious about, you can go to our training center tab and view previous trainings, PowerPoint presentations on that particular subject matter. So if you go to the agency center, it brings up all these squares of information, which once again are a lot of helpful information for agencies to utilize. It has all of our contact information where you can find specific people in our office if you're looking for somebody in particular. ECAT is a very popular site used by agencies and vendors alike, that it lists all of our electronic catalog of all of our current active statewide contracts. You can also get to LaPS, which is where we post all of our public bid openings, and not only does the Office of State Procurement post our bids there, but other state agencies, universities, most universities post their bids there. Also some political subdivisions and quasi-agencies even post their bids there. So just different publications, let me touch on that. If you look at the publications tab, it has several different documents, including our procurement handbook, that has a wealth of information on anything you'd want to know about the Office of State Procurement and procurement procedures. So back to lapse contracts. The featured contracts tab, if you click on it, it will bring up our featured types of contracts. As you can see, the third one down is the listing, or the lapse contracts, which is a listing of all of the current active lapse contracts. This is page 1 of the list of lapse contracts. Currently, there are 9 pages of lapse contracts listed for, it's around 230 contracts that are currently active that the lapse rule does apply to for all purchases over $25,000. In addition to that, this is a screenshot of a LaGov soft stop error message you will receive if you are utilizing a LaPS contract and sourcing the contract through LaGov. If it is a LaPS contract, this soft warning error message will pop up saying, hey, the LaPS rule does apply to this if your transaction is greater than $25,000. So just another safety net and warning sign that, hey, you may need to apply the LaPS rule in this situation.
So when you use one of these contracts that we just described and the total purchase exceeds $25,000, agencies should look at least 3 contracts that are for the same or similar products. Regarding similar or like contracts, it means that if you're buying a computer, one of the contract holders that would be contacted should not be a janitorial chemical contract holder. All of the contract holders that you send your request for response to should be a computer contract. So then the agency is to prepare and send an RFR, which is a request for responses, to, again, at least 3 contract holders. The RFR, the request for response, is an informal process. I would like to emphasize and stress that this process is informal. It is not another bid. It is not a formal process. It is an informal process. There is no specific way that it needs to be set up. OSP does not have any samples of how the RFR should look. This is completely left up to the agency. So the RFR, or request for response, may include, if applicable, any of the following. It may include a performance-based statement of work that includes such things as, of course, the work to be performed, very important, the location of the work, the period of performance, the deliverable schedule, if it's applicable performance standards, any acceptance criteria, any special requirements such as security clearances or any special knowledge that may be needed, a list of the products required using a generic description of products and functions whenever possible. The RFR may also, if necessary or applicable, request submittal of a project plan for performing the task and information on the contractor's experience and our past performance performing similar tasks. Again, these are all mays, and they may be included in your RFR, again, if it's applicable. Or the RFR may just include the products or equipment that needs to be purchased. So as part of the RFR process, one of the main things that it's going to help you to make a best value determination. And a best value determination is one that considers, in addition to underlying contract pricing, such factors as the probable life of the item selected, any environmental and energy efficiency considerations, the technical qualifications, delivery terms, warranty, maintenance availability, administrative cost, compatibility of an item with the user's environment, and the user's familiarity with the item or service. The RFR may also request submittal of a firm fixed total price for any labor and or products which are no higher than the prices that are in the LaPS contract. So once the agency prepares their RFR, they submit it to at least 3 LaPS contract holders. When the responses are received back, the responses are to be evaluated in order for the agency to make their best value determination of what contract they will purchase from. Let me remind you that the best value determination does not need to be based on the low cost. It can be based on any criteria that was previously discussed. And once the responses are evaluated and the determination is made, the purchase order can be issued to the contract holder. All of the RFR information that has been obtained by the agency should remain in the agency's procurement file. This information does not need to be sent to OSP, and it does not need to be reviewed by OSP, nor does it need to be approved by OSP. Please also keep in mind that purchases shall not be artificially divided to avoid the requirements of the LaPS rule. This means that if you need to purchase, say, computer equipment, this week you should not be issuing a purchase order for $24,999 and then turn around next week and issue another purchase order for, say, $24,999, just to keep it under the $25,000 threshold of the LaPS rule. So I'm sure some of you are wondering, with the new small purchase executive order being released recently, whether or not the $25,000 will be increased to $30,000. Well, there are plans in the works to increase the dollar limit, but until such time the rule is revised, the $25,000 still remains in place.
So, recapping all of the hot subject items of the LaPS rule, the mysterious LaPS rule, which hopefully now isn't as mysterious to you. It does apply to brand name contracts, LaPS contracts, and multi-state cooperative contracts. It applies to any agency that uses any of these type of contracts, and it does apply to all purchases that exceed a total amount of $25,000 when utilizing one of these types of contracts.
Hopefully we have answered the what, who, where, when, how, and why of the LaPS rule, and we have unlocked the mysteries, which, as you can see, it's really not so mysterious.
So, we would like to open it up to any questions that y'all may have.
Is RFR the same as a quote?
No, it is not. Again, an RFR is an informal process. A quote is considered a formal process depending on what the total amount of the procurement is. So, no, it's not the same as a quote, because I would consider a quote a formal process that we're going through because of the total amount that's being procured.
Okay, what if your agency is trying to stay unified? For example, the IT department wants all computers to be Dell.
Well, there are certain aspects of the RFR that allow you, and that's one of them, that allows you to not be required to go with the lowest price. So if you have, for consistency purposes and compatibility with existing items, then you should still get the request for quotes or get your request for responses from 3 different contract holders, but that is your justification to go with a particular brand for compatibility purposes with existing equipment.
Okay, the last one I have is, does all of the criteria have to be met in order for it to be considered a LaPS contract, or just one?
All of the criteria for...
I believe you had a slide with criteria listed.
So the LaPS rule applies to any contract that was set up as a brand name contract a LaPS contract, or in accordance with a multi-state cooperative. Also, if the total purchase exceeds $25,000 from one of those specific contracts, the LaPS rule applies.
Did that answer the question?
If the total amount is greater than $25,000, then we have to go through the bidding process, correct?
Again, this is not a bidding process. It's called an RFR, and it is considered an informal process. This is not set up for you to have to go through another competitive process such as the bid. The rule was put into place so that agencies, again, could be good stewards of the taxpayers' money and show that they considered more than just one contract, and they made their best value determination of why they chose to purchase from the contract that they are purchasing from.
What type of documentation is needed for an RFR?
The request for response, again, is left up to the agency. In the rule, there are some things that are listed that may be included. But again, it's really left up to the agency to include whatever information they feel is needed so that the contract holders know what it is that they're looking for, and the contract holders will have an idea of how they're going to make their best value determination. Again, this is an informal process. We're not telling you, we're giving you things that may be listed, but you need to make that determination of what's applicable to the particular procurement that you're making.
And we will be posting this PowerPoint to our website, and if you look at slides 24 through 27, once it's posted, it tells you the different aspects and criteria and information that you may want to include in your RFR.
Okay, what if you run into an issue where only one vendor submits the RFR back? Is one RFR sufficient to meet LaPS?
Yes, you just need to include in your procurement file any other contract holders that you sent the RFR to in order to get a response from. So just because you received one back doesn't mean you need to go and look for two other ones. If you initially sent it out to 3 different contract holders, you make sure that you document that in your procurement file, and then when if you only receive the one back, then you document that as well in your procurement file.
The RFR process seems to require more time and effort than the normal competitive process, and often does not provide any cost savings. Has consideration been made regarding increasing the threshold to make it more beneficial?
At this time, the only threshold that we are considering to increase it to would be in compliance with the Small Purchase Executive Order. At this time, we have not made any consideration to increase it any further than that.
So this goes back to the other question about, so someone asked, so just 3 requests is sufficient?
Yes, it is.
That's all we have so far.
All right.
Have anything else?
So thank you all for joining us today and learning more about the mysterious LaPS rule. And like Felicia said, hopefully it's not as mysterious now. As you can see on the screen, we do have a help desk that you can send any additional questions to, and also our front desk phone number. But we do encourage you to send emails so we have documentation and record of the inquiry. Thanks again for joining us today, and y'all have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.